without further ado, I would like to welcome Bill Saunders, President of the Vancouver District Labour Council. Big, warm round of applause. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Joel. But what we see is going on is we see corporate globalization going on. And we see the corporations in a position of power that they've very seldom enjoyed in the last few centuries, reorganizing the world in their image and in their interest. And that's what these initials represent. They represent pieces of that corporate globalization and the reorganization of the economic system of the world. But is it to our advantage that this is being reorganized? No, of course. And when I hear things like Libby referred to it, the new council, the North American Competitiveness Council. When workers hear the word competitiveness, what we hear is code for lower wages and higher profits. That's what we hear. Because that's what it means when they're talking about competing in the world. They want us to lower our standards. When we hear the North American Free Trade Agreement, or the very sadly misnamed Security and Prosperity Partnership, which to me doesn't represent at all what's going on there, but what we see is we see corporations, the corporate business interests, reorganizing North America using Mexican labor, American capital, Canadian resources, and South American resources if they can throw them in. That's what we see. So this isn't in our interest. That's the reason why it's always covered with names that don't make any sense, with initials that numb your mind, and with very little public debate when they come in. This is being done behind closed doors. The drivers of it are the corporations and business interests of the world, and there's very little in it for workers or for average Canadians. And I want to leave you with a quote from an American. "Those who are prepared to sacrifice liberty for security deserve neither." Thomas Jefferson.
I'm passing the mic to somebody who's doing a very valuable job for society, Mr. Patrick Borden from the Vancouver 9/11 Truth Movement.
Wow, I thought the first thing I was going to have to do was explain why a guy from the 9/11 Truth Movement is here in an SPP demo. This looks like it's being pretty much laid out for us. It's all one issue. Basically, I mean, you have to understand these guys in the neocon agenda, they planned this whole thing with 9/11 in order to be able to do things like the SPP. They wrote about it in 1998. The Project for a New American Century, a neocon think tank, wrote that they needed an event like a new Pearl Harbor, a catastrophic calamity for the American people, in order to galvanize the people's fear, in order to let them take away civil rights, get into war in Asia, and change the political structure in America and North America. One thing I want everybody to understand, though, is the idea of a false flag operation. If anything comes out of our work on 9/11, it should be a mass public understanding of what a false flag operation is. Now, the whole idea of a false flag goes back to the British Navy in the 17th century, and they're fighting in the Caribbean. There was a battle called the Battle of Jenkins' Ear. And Jenkins was some poor guy who got his ear cut off by a British naval captain. That ear was stuffed in a pickle jar and shipped off to Westminster, where it was claimed that his ear had been cut off by an evil Spanish sailor. And the British Parliament said, "That's terrible. We vote to go to war with Spain, and we will give you the necessary financial resources to do so." Hence, the Battle of Jenkins' Ear was one of the first false flag operations. Basically, the idea of false flag is you put the enemy's flag on your ship, you sail up and you attack your own ship, then you blame it on the other guys. This has been used over and over and over again by the American elites to get people into war. They blew up the battleship Maine in Havana Harbor, got us in the Spanish-American War. They had a nice little sort of dubious skirmish on the Mexican-American border, got to fight with Mexico. Gulf of Tonkin, go to fight in Vietnam. They let the Japanese attack Pearl Harbor, people go into war for World War II. 9/11, what happens? They blew up their own buildings, which you can prove by the evidence of the way the buildings fell. And then, voila, we're in war in Afghanistan and Iraq. Now, what are you going to do the next time you see an event on TV like this and they immediately blame it on the bad guys? Especially like in the 9/11, they knew in 15 minutes somehow that it had been Osama bin Laden that had done it. The only way they could have done that is if they already prepped the media that this is the guy they were going to blame. So next time you see that same kind of event, you know they're trying to fool you to get into war. So don't listen. And if we can get enough people to actually understand that, the next time they may not be able to get us into war. Iran is their next target. They might be able to start World War III over Iran. Will you listen, or will you see through what they do? Thank you.
Do we want corporations telling our governments what we should have? So we stand up as Canadians across the country, which is going on right now, and all across in cities across Canada, and say, we want accountability. We want you to tell us the truth. We're not asking, we're not requesting as Canadian citizens. We're demanding that you come out and tell us the truth. We're demanding that you tell us what this deal is. We're demanding to know why you're having corporations dictate to Parliament behind closed doors what the rules are. This is Canada. This is not a fascist corporation, ladies and gentlemen. We go to work, we pay our bills, we all want the same thing. It's the same thing around the world. Everybody wants the same thing. They want a house. They want a roof over their head. They want food to put on their table. They want clothes for their kids back. They want to be able to send their kids off to a good school and know that they're going to be taught the truth and learn real math and science. They want their kids to be able to have a healthcare system that's going to back them up. They want clean running water and sewage. This is not just a Canadian request. This is a world request. This is a request around the world that people want. People from Mexico, people from South America, people from Africa that are slaughtered continuously day after day because their natural resources are worth more to the profit of these corporations that I'm writing out to you than it is to have these people secure and safe and be able to live lives. Is that fair to the people of the world? Is that what we want as Canadians, to slowly slip into a state in which we have corporations such as General Electric, which does water purification? Look it up, people. That runs water technology. Is that what we want? Corporations like that telling us that we can't touch the water on the ground like they did in Belize when they privatized the water. That water belongs to a corporation. Is that what we want? We want corporations telling our Parliament. It's time for us to stand up and say enough is enough. No more war in Africa. No more war in South America. No more war in the Middle East. No more war anywhere in the world. It's time for brothers and sisters of all races to get together and move on. And it's time for this SPP deal, which is going to push us into that agenda, to stop. We need to stand out and speak out. And I'd like to introduce to you a guest today by the name of Connie Fogel from the Canadian Action Party. Connie Fogel of the Canadian Action Party.
It's not a question of us demanding now for disclosure or for information. We know what's going on. We know there's a lot of information that's been around and about now since 2001. The information really started escalating. And it's a question now, what do we do about it? It's not enough that finally you've got a few good people, and there are good people in every political party. There are good people everywhere, and what they need are all of you, all of the people, to get behind them and to help them to do what they want to do the right thing, to make the demands for the right thing. So continue to do that with your favorite MP. It's not enough. In fact, it's wrong. It's harmful. It's a capitulation to the agenda of the New World Order and of the corporatization of North America to have a vote in Parliament. The reason is the people who are in Parliament are responsible for the implementation of the corporatization of North America that's happening right now. It's not a threat, it's happening. The Liberals, the Conservatives have enough people. Hopefully there would be enough people amongst the NDP to vote against it. The reality is, you put a vote to Parliament, folks, we're going to have the formalization of the institutionalization of the integration of Canada into a North American entity. Think about it. That's not what I want. I don't want them to talk about, I don't want them to be debating about whether or not Canada should die. It's not for Parliament to make that decision. That's my decision. That's your decision. It's a decision of the citizens of this country. And what a really caring politician, an MP, a member of Parliament in Canada, one who really does understand what's going on, whatever political stripe they are, what they must do at this time, because it's too late only to be talking, what they must do is demand a referendum for the people of this country to say whether or not we want to be integrated into a North American entity that's not going to be democratic. It's an entity that's going to be corporate run, bureaucratically run. There will be no elections for people, no representation for the people, no accountability to the people. It's the end, absolute end of democracy and sovereignty in North America, or Canada, for Mexico, for the United States. Be very clear about that. When you've got the leader of the NDP who was asked about the admission and the Crown speech in Manitoba, where they talked about the NAFTA highway, his answer was, well, we need to have it because it brings jobs to Churchill. No. You know, the NAFTA highway is a mechanism to bring forward not only goods, but to bring forward people. And it's cheap labor they want to bring forward. You can't blame the poor people who are coming up from the South Americas who work for whatever that they can get. But it's going to displace the workers up here. It's going to create racism. Let's be very clear about exactly what's going on here. Let's be very clear that the provinces across this country who are bringing in the identifiers, the RFID identifiers in our driver's licenses, are complicit. Let's be very clear that the municipalities who are failing to address the issues, you've got homelessness here in Vancouver. Why do we have third world conditions in this city, in this province, in this country, the richest, the best in the world? The reason we have it is because our politicians are complicit in permitting it, because, you see, people don't count, but you're in an elected position and you're a member of Parliament in this country. And when Canada's Patriot Act was brought in 2001, our anti-terrorist legislation, there should have been a total demand for the removal of that, not to allow that to happen. Everybody capitulated and voted for it. The security certificates, there have been some good moves made on that. When the 9/11 incident happened and all the information that's come out, why is it that we don't have anybody in Parliament who's willing to stand up and say, there's something dramatically wrong here, folks, when we've got John Manley, who was the one who signed the Smart Border Declaration in 2001, which was, among other things, said we're going to bring in these kind of tracking devices, and now then he was the spokesman for the Afghanistan report, and he's saying how Canada has to continue to be there. What are we doing there? Why are we participating in an invasion, all of which is founded on a lie, the 9/11 lie? And why is it that we don't have anybody that's elected anywhere that I'm aware of that's willing to stand up and say, you know, folks, there's something really wrong here, when we're asking our Canadian young people to go off and die, when we're asking for Canadian tax dollars to be scooped off and sent off to aggrandize the riches of the munitions corporations, when we're asking for our money to be sent into military operations rather than giving us our health care, rather than getting our people that are homeless, getting them into housing, when we're being asked to take the money and pay off the financiers who are financing all these kind of operations, why is it that we have nobody in Parliament to really call the question for what it really is? It's up to you. It's up to you as citizens. Not just to be informed, because you are informed. Many, many, many people are very informed, and we're getting more informed. It's up to you to realize your power. And it's up to you to realize that your members of Parliament, though many of them are good-willed people, they're powerless. It's quite true that they're powerless, because you've got the Competitiveness Council that's now been institutionalized as a result of the Security and Prosperity Partnership Agreement. And that's such a dramatic, horrifying situation, and yet we've had not one member of Parliament called for a non-confidence motion in our Parliament when the Competitiveness Council was introduced, to say the institutionalization of the Security and Prosperity Partnership Agreement, which is going to integrate Canada with the United States and Mexico, It's just a no-go. This is a dramatic, not just a violation of our Constitution, it's a betrayal of our Constitution, it's a betrayal of us, it's an abandonment of our rights. Why is it? There should have been a non-confidence motion at that time. There should have been a non-confidence motion when the no-fly list came in. There should have been a non-confidence motion, a lot of talk about any number of attitudes and things that are happening. There should be a non-confidence motion right now on the fact of the changes in the law where they're trying to recriminalize the law, make it harder, get it tougher, whether it's with the Patriot Act type of mentality or whether it's on the use of marijuana. All of these things are contrary to the traditions, to the history, to the will, to the desire, to the wish of the people of Canada. And you are the people of Canada. And I am nothing more than one of the instruments that happens to be legally entitled to stand up before you and express a wish that is a wish of a lot of people because nobody else is expressing it.
Thank you, Cody!